Braun and Clarke's 6-stage thematic analysis. Here are some common questions I've been asked about it. What research paradigm does this fit within? What does reflexive thematic analysis actually mean? How can I go deeper in my analysis because I've been told it's descriptive and superficial? And where does theory come into it? Keep watching because I'm going to answer all those questions. This video is the second in a 2-part series about Braun and Clarke's 6-stage thematic analysis. In the first one, I walk you through the nuts and bolts how to actually do it. So if that's what you're interested in, go and check out that video. I will link to it up on the screen now. But in this video, I'm going to answer those frequently asked questions, those questions that always come up year after year. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've been supporting social science graduate students for the last 20 years. In that time, I've supervised literally hundreds of students who've done thematic analysis, and there are these very common questions that I always get asked about it. So in this video, I'm going to be answering those. Now, before we get started, I think it is worth having a quick recap of what thematic analysis actually is. Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis is essentially a flexible process that you can use to identify, analyse and interpret patterns within qualitative data. It's about identifying deeper meanings and deeper connections within your data to develop a really intricate understanding of your topic. I go into way more detail about this in the previous video, so do go and check that out if you want to. Okay, so let's get into it. First up, a very common question that I get asked is about paradigms. So where does Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis sit paradigmatically? Now, asking this question is really important because if you are going to use thematic analysis, Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis, you are going to have to write about this in your thesis. You're going to have to situate your approach within the broader landscape of research philosophy. You're going to have to demonstrate your understanding of it and make a really compelling argument as to why this technique was the most appropriate one for you. Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis is one that, in my humble opinion, sits within the interpretivist paradigm. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit more about that shortly, but if you want a deep dive into the interpretivist paradigm, I will pop a link on the screen right now that will take you to a video that does just that. So why do I think that Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis is interpretivist? Well, Braun and Clarke's approach is like putting on a pair of glasses that help you see way beneath the surface. It enables you to dig deeper, to ask questions, to reflect on what that all means. And this method fits really well within an interpretivist paradigm because interpretivism is essentially a research philosophy that focuses on understanding people's perspectives and people's experiences. It's about recognising that reality is subjective and our interpretations of the world are going to be based on our own personal experiences, our own personal meanings. There's not a hard, objective, concrete reality that just exists regardless of whether we're there or not. Reality is something that we construct as we go about our lives in the social world on a daily basis. Through our interactions with each other, we create the social world. That's what the interpretivists believe. Now, Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis is kind of flexible enough to adapt to different research within the interpretivist paradigm, but I don't think it goes far beyond that. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach that you can just kind of copy and paste to a different paradigm like positivism. If you're looking for something a bit more numbers-driven, a bit more objective, there are different approaches that you can use to thematic analysis. For example, the approach of Boyatzis. I'll put a reference in the description for some further reading on that. So in terms of paradigms, I would put thematic analysis, Braun and Clarke's thematic analysis, very firmly within the interpretivist one. Now, the next question is about reflexive thematic analysis. And this is the approach to thematic analysis that Braun and Clarke advocate, and they've spoken about it in their recent book, which I will also link to in the description. But what does reflexive thematic analysis actually mean? Well, it's all about researchers being self-aware and thoughtful throughout the analysis process. This means acknowledging our own biases, our own preconceptions, and the impact that that might have on our interpretation of the data. As interpretivist social science researchers, we're not completely neutral. We bring our own perspectives and our own experiences to the party. So when we're analysing data, it's really important to reflect on how these things are impacting upon that analysis. How are those things influencing how we interpret this data? It's like being aware of the lens through which you're looking at the world. For instance, let's say that you're analysing a participant's accounts of their struggles with anxiety. Reflexive thematic analysis encourages you to think about how your own experiences of anxiety might be influencing how you're interpreting this data. Perhaps you're recognising some parallels or some contrast between the participant's story of anxiety and your story of anxiety. If you're seeing some commonalities there, that might prompt you to be more empathetic and more understanding. And how you coped with your own anxiety might shape how you approach the analysis. If you found mindfulness practices really helpful, you might be more attuned to noticing that in the data. That might be something that stands out to you because you've got that proximity to it yourself. But the issue with this might be that you could potentially overlook other coping strategies that someone's talking about. So our own experiences sometimes result in us over-focusing on particular things during the course of our analysis. And by being aware of that, by being reflexive, that can open us up to become more aware of other things that are in the data. So essentially, reflexive thematic analysis acknowledges that as researchers, our subjectivity, our own experiences, seep into our analysis. And by being aware of that and recognising when it's happening and responding appropriately to it, that can actually enrich the depth of our analysis. By recognising that, we can approach our data with humility and self-awareness, and that will essentially enrich the depth of our insights. Now, the next question is about how do I go deeper in my analysis? If you feel like your analysis is quite surface level and you're summarising rather than analysing, what can you do about that? A lot of the initial feedback that people get on their early attempts at thematic analysis is that it's superficial. You're just lumping things together. You're categorising rather than really delving into the underlying meanings. You're not making connections between the different elements. And that kind of feedback really stings. So how do you make sure that you are actually digging deep? You're not just scratching the surface. I think we need an example here. For example, imagine a researcher conducting interviews on workplace satisfaction. They identify several broad themes like work-life balance, team dynamics, and career advancement. Here are the differences between surface level analysis and deep analysis for those themes. So first up, let's look at the theme of work-life balance. So if a researcher was being a bit surface level, they might note that participants mentioned struggling to manage their work and personal lives effectively. They might list common challenges such as long working hours, conflicting priorities, and difficulty disconnecting from work. If the researcher was digging a bit deeper, they might uncover underlying factors that contribute to work-life balance struggles, such as organisational culture, managerial expectations, and societal norms. For instance, they might find that employees feel pressured to work overtime due to a culture that values productivity over well-being. Additionally, they might identify a link between poor work-life balance and decreased job satisfaction, leading to higher turnover rates and decreased productivity. Let's now take a look at the theme team dynamics. So if a researcher was being quite surface level, they might document instances of conflict or lack of communication among team members. They might highlight specific incidents or issues reported by participants during the interviews. If they were diving a bit deeper, through further analysis, the researcher might uncover broader patterns within team dynamics, such as power dynamics, trust levels, and organisational structures. For example, they might find that hierarchical structures are inhibiting open communication and collaboration between colleagues, which is leading to feelings of resentment and disengagement. Additionally, they might identify the role of leadership styles in shaping team dynamics, with leaders who are quite autocratic, stifling creativity and stifling innovation, whilst leaders who are more participative, more collaborative, are fostering a culture of trust, which essentially helps people collaborate and work together. So can you see the difference there between that surface level analysis and that deeper analysis? The deeper analysis involves spending more time thinking about how things might be connected. It involves looking at the bigger picture, the broader context, what's really going on in the background. And by doing this, you get a more comprehensive and a more nuanced analysis. And on to the fourth question. Where does theory come into thematic analysis? Now, a lot of people say that thematic analysis is devoid of theory, that it's atheoretical, that there's no theory whatsoever. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that thematic analysis is designed so that you, the researcher, can weave your own threads of theory into your analysis. Braun and Clarke actually talked about this in a recent interview they did, and I'll link to that in the description. They made it really clear that their approach is not theory-free. Instead, theory can actually be the backbone of thematic analysis, providing a really solid foundation for you to build on. In that interview, Braun and Clarke urge researchers to be aware of and to be close to the theory that resonates with them. And they encourage researchers to integrate theory into their own analytical process. So in essence, Braun and Clarke are encouraging researchers to bring their own theory to the table, to weave that theory into their analytical process, and to have it as their own guiding light. So how would this work in practice? Let's take a look at a couple of examples. In a thematic analysis of work-life balance using a Marxist theoretical framework, you might interpret the data through the lens of class struggle and economic relations in the workplace. For instance, instead of merely identifying themes like flexible work hours or job satisfaction, you would delve deeper into the power dynamics between workers and employers. You'd explore how capitalist structures influence perceptions and experiences of work-life balance. An example of a deeper analysis here could involve examining how themes like overtime expectations or unpaid labour reflect broader Marxist concepts such as exploitation or alienation. You might uncover narratives of workers feeling compelled to sacrifice personal time for the sake of job security or financial stability, revealing those systemic inequalities that are inherent in capitalist societies according to your theoretical framework. So by grounding your thematic analysis in Marxism, you move beyond surface level observations to uncover those underlying social, economic and political forces that shape work-life balance. Now, this theoretical framework allows for a more nuanced understanding of your participants' experiences. It highlights those intersecting influences of class, labour relations and capitalist ideology on work-life dynamics. The same study, from a radical feminist perspective, might have you scrutinising the data through the lens of gender inequality and patriarchal structures within the workplace. Rather than simply identifying themes like career advancement or parental leave policies, you would explore the deeper implications of gender norms and power dynamics. For instance, themes such as double burden or gendered division of labour would be examined within the context of feminist theories on oppression and liberation. You might uncover narratives of women struggling to balance caregiving responsibilities with professional aspirations, and that's going to shed light on those systemic barriers and discrimination that they face in the workplace. An example of deeper analysis could involve interrogating themes like microaggressions or glass ceiling effects through a feminist lens, revealing how ingrained sexism perpetuates inequalities and essentially limits women's opportunities for advancement. So by centering your thematic analysis on radical feminist perspectives, you gain insights into the complex interplay of gender, power and social norms in shaping those work-life dynamics. This theoretical framework empowers you to move beyond those surface level observations and illuminate the influence of gendered structures on your participants' experiences. It really emphasises the importance of challenging those patriarchal norms and advocating for gender equality in both professional and personal spheres. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to check out the video before this one, which, as I said, is about the step-by-step process, and drop any questions in the comments.